And away we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Coffee Talk. It is Coffee Talk Live. We are live on YouTube as well as X, formerly known as Twitter. And you can find me at Coffee Talk Live on YouTube or Prepper University, as well as at Coffee Talk Chat on X, formerly known as Twitter, if you care to look for me there, as well as Fistful of Radio. Fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon as we sit here and we humor Uncle, who wanted some of my attention. For those of you who can see, and for those of you who cannot, that is Uncle, the 20-pound tuxedo cat, 19 pounds, 14 ounces. If we want to be, I think it was 19 pounds, 14 ounces, if I remember correctly. You're up there, buddy. You're up there, buddy, with your big self. Trying to get my attention here, trying to let you see him real quick, and I'll put him back down because he's really in the way. You're in the way, buddy. I'll put you on the desk. So, got Uncle keeping me company for today, if he sticks around. As we get ready to dive into, oops, see what you did, buddy? You knocked something over. As we get ready to dive into the news and see what is going on in the world today. And of course, for those of you who are listening and not able to see, I will read as many of the comments as is realistic so that you can keep up with the conversation. And I'll go ahead and acknowledge some of the people that have chimed in here so far today. I see Helter is here, Delo is here, Dragon, Urban Angst, Boogers is here, Monkey is here so far. As we get ready to take a look at what is going on in the world today. Some things you may know about, some things maybe not so much. Maybe you've heard it, maybe you haven't. Because sometimes I dig up some things in the news floating around that's flying under the radar that it's kind of interesting for one reason or another. And I'm sure you've all heard about this so far, and that is Voldemort Zelensky. I call him Voldemort. It's Vladimir, actually, I believe. But Zelensky is back. Zelensky is back in D.C. begging again. Because, hey, Biden is his greatest benefactor. Associated Press says Zelensky visits Capitol Hill and the White House with U.S. aid for Ukraine is at risk of collapse. And here he is again. Hey, Zelensky, welcome back. You're in the United States more than you're in your own country. Says his country's future is at stake. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky used inspirational words, resolve, and a nod to Christmas in appealing Tuesday to leaders in Congress for U.S. aid for his fighters in the war with Russia. A wink and a nod to Christmas. Merry Christmas. His stocking's pretty damn full. But as he then headed to the White House, additional American support was in grave doubt. And we read about that last week. I believe that naturally the package is up in the air. It was voted down because there's a lot of extra things in there that Congress doesn't like. Also, more emphasis, they believe, from that spending package needs to go to the border because it's out of control. But here we go. Zelensky's visit to Washington came at a grim time, much changed from the hero's welcome he received last year. President Joe Biden request for an additional $110 billion U.S. aid package for the Ukraine, Israel, and other national security needs is at serious risk of collapse in Congress as Republicans are insisting on linking it to strict U.S.-Mexico border security changes. The Democrats decry. So yeah, it's all Republicans' fault because they want to actually spend money in the United States instead of sending it all over the world and giving it away to other countries like Ukraine, for example. I see, just like Fetterman, he's all about being casual when he visits Congress. Let me see here. We can get further down into this article without it bouncing all over the place because of the stupid pop-up ads. It says ahead of, where am I? Hold still. Okay. Zelensky impressed on the senators that Ukraine could win the war against Russia, telling them he was drafting men in their 30s and 40s in a show of strength for the battle. In his trademark olive drab, he stood before a portrait of George Washington, history hanging behind him. Drafting men in their 30s and 40s. Wow. So they raised the age limit on their conscription. To the House Democrats, he showcased his country's embrace of the West by pointing to the Christmas season, telling them it was the first year Ukraine would celebrate on December 25th rather than the day the Russians marked the holiday. Oh, unification with the U.S. We're going to change our fake made-up holiday to match yours. McConnell said afterwards that Zelensky was inspirational and determined. Yeah, I bet he is. He's inspired and determined to get that money. Paper chaser, but Republican senators excited the meeting? Yeah, it says Republican senator excited the meeting unmoved from the position. Senator Mark Wayne, Mullen R. Olka said the emergency funding wouldn't gain GOP support unless it includes real, meaningful border reform. I think all of it should go to the border if that's the case. Unbelievable. And I'll go ahead and acknowledge a few more people that have popped in here. I see All People is here. Frankie M is here. Good afternoon, good evening. Armored Ghost, he says, why do Zelensky's handlers still not give him a suit? Because he has to look like a person with a purpose. That is his uniform for the time being. And Brian is here. Glad you could make it. Armored Ghost is almost mid-December already. That means Halloween merchandise will appear in just one more week. No. Valentine's. I'm surprised it's not up already. And David says, not true. I'm one who tried and was denied. What did you try, David? And David Jones said, did he lose one left with a big bag of cash? Yeah, well, he always leaves with a big bag of cash. I don't know if he's going to get it this time, but he's going to try. Dragon says, we weren't serious about helping Ukraine to defeat Russia from the beginning. This is simply a Christmas present to the U.S. military contractors. I see Bingo is here. Urban says, Ukraine has basically run out of young men. Images of troops show many older men who normally would never be sent into an active zone. Meanwhile, their leader's wife is shopping for high-end purses. Yeah, she was shopping on Saks Fifth Avenue in New York the last time he was here, right? And there was rumors of her spending some outrageous sum of money, over $1 million. And Helter said, Zelensky crossing his fingers for an early Christmas. Maybe he can afford another nice new boat. Biden just needs to make sure he gets his 10%. Yeah, because, the old man gets 10%. Hunter said that. Hunter had said that before he was president, because that's come up. And Donna Beaver is here. Glad you could make it. And she reminds everybody to thumbs up and share. Much appreciated if you can do that for me. And Gary Edwards is here. Happy holidays. So it's going to be a happy holiday for Zelensky, making another trip to the United States. David says, love one like wife ops low. Not sure what you mean there. Not sure what you mean there. But yeah, he's back in the White House. He always dresses like that. He dresses like that on purpose because he's trying to look like a man with a purpose, like he's one of the boys, like he's down with his troops, like he's on the front lines himself. I don't have time to put on a suit. I'm just going to pull my armor off and get off the plane and walk in and beg for money so that me and my boys can keep plugging away. That's the image. That's why he looks that way. But it's part of the act. It's part of the act. And I'm sure he does want a lot of money from the U.S., from wherever he can get it, to keep things going as long as he possibly can. And I'm sure he gets a little bit of the taste of that as well. I'm sure he does. But yeah, he's back again, begging again. And like I had pointed out, They're trying to make Republicans look demonized for saying, hey, if we're going to spend all this money, shouldn't more of it be going to something in the United States? And their particular issue right now is immigration, which is a huge problem, regardless of what party you're in. It's a huge problem. And again, those people need to be turned around and sent back where they are coming from. And somebody had made a comment about, we were talking about this the other day, the immigration comes up every once in a while. And I stick with it. It would be cheaper to repatriate these people. And someone had commented, I'm not sure if they're here today or not, on the previous video, that it costs, that in the UK, they claim it costs like 167 or 169,000 pounds to repatriate a person, so it's cheaper to keep them there and take care of them. That makes no sense. You can't tell me that a plane ticket and an escort to the airport costs more than taking care of them for life, with medical costs and housing and food and clothes and whatever else you're paying for, school. You can't tell me that it costs 169,000 pounds sterling to have someone escorted to the airport and hand them a plane ticket and put them in a charter flight to go back wherever the hell they came from. But of course, he's suggesting in that comment that that's what the UK claims, if I remember the comment correctly. It's absolutely outrageous. If that's what the UK is claiming, they're not being honest. They're not being honest. But we're going to talk about that a little bit here, about the homeless crisis in, is it San Francisco? This is going to come up. I believe it's San Francisco. The homeless crisis, they have a solution, and their solution is someone else to blame. And this comes from Lightwave. Lightwave Reports is reporting on this. San Francisco official says homelessness crisis is absolutely the result of capitalism and calls for police cuts. There he is. That's the official. Where's his name? I want to read his name. It says San Francisco District 5 Supervisor Dean Preston. That's Dean Preston, kind of looking like a young Al Bundy there. Dean Preston recently stated in the documentary The Battle for San Francisco that the homeless crisis is in his district, which includes the Tenderloin, is absolutely the result of capitalism and what happens at the bottom rungs of the economic system. Preston argued that the biggest driver of homelessness is people losing their jobs, income, or getting evicted for inability to pay the rent. He blamed major landlords literally causing folks to lose their homes through evictions and real estate speculation and pricing people out. The Democratic Socialist supervisor disagreed with the city's completely counterproductive approach of inconsistent arrests of drug users and homelessness encampment sweeps, which he believes has actually made it less safe and increases overdoses. How are they going to overdose if they're in jail? When asked about constituent concerns regarding encampments and rampant open drug use, Preston responded, I don't think every instance of poverty or addiction or behavioral health issue is a safety threat to someone walking by. He argued many people are doing things that are very harmful to themselves on the streets who aren't necessarily a safety threat. Really? You walk up and down those streets, Preston. Walk up and down those streets by yourself. So capitalism is why there's homeless people. It's not because of drug addiction. It's not because of alcoholism. It's not because of mental health issues. It's not because of immigration. It's because of landlords and capitalism. And why do the landlords raise their rent? To be selfish or because of outrageous land and property taxes? Which is it, Preston? Why do you think they keep raising the rents? Why do you think they raise the rents until the building can no longer be maintained and then that property gets foreclosed on by the city? They're losing their property and going into a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 11. I don't think that's very profitable. And then the city turns around and sells the property to those tech billionaires who are trying to, because this is happening a lot in San Francisco, correct? That they buy up these huge swaths of land for construction projects for their so-called utopian cities that they want to build in California. That's the problem, huh? Okay. I see Alexander has joined us from Wisconsin. Glad you could make it. I see Zane and Spectre and South Florida DCL has made it here today as well. And Donna says it would be cheaper. It would be cheaper than aren't flying first class. We have Army cargo planes. Put them into use. Yeah. Put them into, but yeah, I mean, chartering a flight, cargo planes is fine. But again, I stand by that. It's cheaper to repatriate them. Monkey says, oh, yes, the good old it's capitalism's fault excuse. Well, he calls himself a democratic socialist, which is an oxymoron. Those are contradictory terms. How can you be be democratic and a socialist at the same time? I don't understand that. Armin says, when your car is burglarized in San Francisco, blame capitalism. Yeah, that must be it. If you weren't so selfish as to own a car, people wouldn't have to break into it. Don't you understand how that works? Urban says, I have a great idea. Universal basic income for every deranged, drug-addicted, urine-covered tent dweller on the street because capitalism is bad. Yeah, that's about it. That's about how that works. And Monkey says, because if it was socialism, those homeless would be a huge or suddenly non-existent. Yeah, under a socialist or a communist regime, those people can disappear pretty easily. And you won't know what happened to them. Cruising says, my rents are double what I used to charge. It's all on the cost of insurance and utilities. I can see that. And Armin says, when your YouTube channel is shadow banned, blame capitalism. Yeah, that must be it. It's because of capitalists. It's because of all the money, the hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars I'm making off of the ads that YouTube puts on my videos is why they're shadow banning my channel. That must be it. That must be the reason. Blames capitalism. And there he is, young Al Bundy again. He looks like he's ready to eat some toaster leavings. Who remembers the toaster leavings gag? But anyway, I mean, he acts like every homeless person, and that's a common misconception. And it just tells me either he's being deliberately deceptive or he doesn't understand how homelessness works. Because very few of the people who are homeless are actual downtrodden, down on their luck. If I only had a break homeless people that are honest and would take a chance if you offered it to them. That's a minority in the homeless communities. Anyone who's ever worked within any of them knows what I'm talking about. And also, lest we forget, there are people who are homeless by choice because they just like that. They like that lifestyle. There is such a thing as people like that. Monkey says China mainland takes the homeless out of the rural China and basically tells them to defend for yourself. And Zane says rent is so high, I'm thinking about shutting down my brick and mortar store and just moving online. Yeah, it doesn't pay. Doesn't pay. And here's an article I thought was interesting. And I thought it was interesting because it really kind of showcases just how stupid people are. And there's a couple of things in here I didn't realize, or at least one thing. And I'm going to share this. And this is local news, WSOC Charlotte. It says chaos at Charlotte City Council leads to mayor clearing the chambers twice. And I did read this a little bit because, I don't always read the articles. I just I read them when I'm sitting here with you guys. And what I thought was interesting was that you only get 2 minutes here because typically it's 3 minutes. When you go up before the school board meeting or you go up to a town hall meeting or something like this, you have a 3-minute countdown, correct? But they say it's only 2 minutes in Charlotte. So here we go. It was a standing room only crowd at the Government Center for Charlotte City Council's monthly public forum. during the public forum, 15 members of the public are each given 2 minutes to talk about whatever topic is on their mind. Yeah, they get 15 members of the public are given 2 minutes each to be ignored by the council, basically. During last month's public forum, supporters of Palestine called on Charlotte City Council to pass a resolution calling for a ceasefire. Unlike last month's meeting, supporters of Palestine and Israel signed up to speak at Monday night's meeting. Before the start of the public forum, Lyles warned council members that they may have to evacuate the chamber if the conversation got too heated. About 30 minutes later, Lyles ordered her colleagues out. After a pro-Palestinian speaker refused to leave the podium, usually if you refuse to leave the podium, they arrest you, by the way. I don't know if you've ever seen that. Supporters of the speaker continued to clap and yell. That led to Lyles ordering city leaders to leave for 2 minutes. When Charlotte City Council left, Lyles returned and pleaded to the crowd for civility. Several assured her that would happen. Charlotte City Council then returned to the chamber to hear from the remaining speakers. The first speaker to address Charlotte City Council when they returned was pro-Israel. Some people in the crowd taunted and disrupted her as she spoke. When she concluded, the mayor asked them to stop before they went on to the next speaker. 2 female Palestinian supporters refused to stop. Lyles then ordered the 2 women to be kicked out, but they refused to leave. When they wouldn't listen to the Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department commands to depart, Lyles kicked everyone out of the chamber, so they had to clear the room. This is what I think is so amazingly stupid about this. That these people in Charlotte, okay, people in Charlotte think somehow that having the council of the city of Charlotte demand a ceasefire in Gaza will matter to anybody. Oh, I demand that you insist upon a ceasefire in the Gaza. And somewhere in the Middle East, Hamas and the Gazan government-elect in Israel and Iran and Iraq and everybody else who's got a hand in there will say, oh, gee, the city council in Charlotte said that we should have a ceasefire, so maybe we better really consider it now. Maybe we better get on that. How stupid are people? You know, I know people are not that smart. I say it all the time. Hey, folks, people are not that bright, okay? We're not that intelligent. We're not as smart of a species as we think we are, despite all of the technology. Hell, I'm not that smart, okay? I make plenty of mistakes. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. But how dumb people are is really frightening sometimes, to the point where they're going to get hot about it. They're going to get into it in the chamber. They're going to fight with each other. They're going to refuse to leave. They're going to have to throw everybody out of the building. I mean, I'm surprised we've lasted as long as we have. I say it all the time. I'm surprised the human race has lasted as long as it has. Cruising says, I was homeless for about 3 weeks right after I graduated college. Getting clean to go for a job interview was hard, and keeping my stuff safe from other homeless was harder. Worth the fight, though. Absolutely, if you're willing to fight your way through it. I'm glad you made it. And Semper Fi says, sorry I'm late. Was buying ammo. I mean groceries. Yeah, groceries. Groceries and ammo. You can use ammo to get groceries. Urban says they think the entire world is Palestine. And again, these people, you'll be the first one on the chopping block if they took over tomorrow. If Hamas took over the United States tomorrow, you'll be the first one to go. I guarantee you. You know, the area of God the area that was attacked initially on October 7th was a very liberal area. Look it up. I kid you not. Very liberal area of peace-loving Israeli people that want to show the Palestinians, hey, we're all people too, and offer them aid and be friendly and all this other stuff. They were freaking missionaries, for lack of a better description. They were the first ones targeted because they were considered to be the weakest. Sorry if that sounds cruel, but that's the way it is. Frankie says that's how people learn, by making mistakes. Unfortunately, some people don't learn. Correct. They don't. They don't learn. If you screw up in life, sometimes that's just life. If you keep doing it, that's a different problem. That's a different problem. Dragon says if the gallery was full of Charlotte residents advocating for Israel, they would have been given the opportunity to speak. Well, the people from who were in support of Israel did speak, and they had the same problems. Monkey says, I don't think Charlotte's vote for calling for a ceasefire in Gaza is going to do anything. No, it won't. And Monkey said, plus it's the city trying to act in an international politics. Charlotte needs to worry about Charlotte. And I'm sure there's enough things going on in Charlotte right now that are enough of a problem that they should be concerned with without worrying about what's going on in the Gaza Strip. It's our problem only in as much as the United States is trying to send money there. In which case, Ukraine is also our problem, and Iran, and Pakistan, and I can go on because we're sending money to half the damn planet. Monkey says the beer virus really brought out who was insane and effed up. The beer virus. Urban says they blink you with hate for Israel while nurturing their own hate for the entire West. They say it, shout it, spray it. They are not hiding what they will do to all. How people can't see this. And he says, oops, blind, not blink. Okay. No problem. Typos are acceptable. I'm not grading your paper. I'm not grading your paper on syntax. But I just, like I said, this stood out to me, not because of anything involving Israel and Palestine, but just the ignorance and stupidity of the people in the crowd, who, by the way, half of them are wearing masks. You see this? You notice this in the picture? Look at all these people with masks on. Here, 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 over here. This guy who's standing up. You did take the damn masks off already. They don't work. Oh, my God. It just stood out to me because it's an interesting showcase of just how stupid people are. People are not that smart. People are foolish and rude and angry and cruel. People can be very cruel, dishonest. They'll lie about anything, even when they know they're wrong, for no reason. They have no justifiable reason. I can understand lying if you have a specific reason that makes sense. There's an old adage that, like, if someone's running and he's being chased by a crowd of people and he runs past you to the left and the crowd runs up and they look like an angry mob and they say, which way did he go? And you point right and they all run to the right. You lied, but you may have saved someone's life. You don't, without knowing the situation, you're assuming that that person is innocent. You lied on their behalf to help them. At least have a reason to be dishonest. People are so awful, and you have to really want to break that cycle of selfishness and arrogance and anger and hatred and dishonesty that is normal for people, because it's in everybody. I know there's this big thing, especially in the modern Christian church, that, oh, everybody is born good and they all have goodness. No, they're not born good. They're born frightened and selfish and angry. They're ripped into the world and they're terrified and they're greedy. And that's natural because they need to be that way to survive. And then you reach a point where you should start evolving out of that. And unfortunately, most people don't. They don't. You have to want to be better than that. You have to want to be a good person. You have to work at it. You have to want to be an honest person. You know what I mean? You have to want it. And when you focus yourself in there long enough, you change and you become a different person, and you look back and you say, I can't believe I used to be like that, or I used to think this way. The only problem is you get really sick of everyone else around you because you look at everyone else and you say, wow, people are pigs. And that's putting pigs in a bad name. And everybody hates you because they're like, oh, he thinks he's so great. They all hate your guts for trying to be honest all the time. Oh, I tell you, what a world. The Wicked Witch was right. What a world, what a world. I don't know what to tell you, folks. Hey, you want to jump back to Pakistan? I mentioned them in passing earlier. Interesting thing happening in Pakistan, and this is another news story. It's going to fly right under the radar. We'll see if they talk about it, if they blow it up in the media or not. This right here is exactly why they're throwing all the foreigners out of the country, starting with the people from Afghanistan. And this comes from the San Diego Union Tribune, because I can't find too many articles on it anywhere else. Suicide bomber attacks police station in northwest Pakistan, killing 23 officers and wounding 32. Yeah. And Cyberjack Sr. made it. He says, sorry for being late, and we'll be watching from the beginning. Well, I'm glad you could make it, Cyberjack. Oh, here we go. Suicide bomber detonated his explosive-laden vehicle at a police station's main gate in northwestern Pakistan early Tuesday, killing at least 23 troops, wounding 32, and causing a part of the building to collapse, authorities said. The attack, one of the deadliest in recent months in Pakistan, because remember, this happens constantly in Pakistan, which is why they wanted to throw all the Afghanis out, since most of the suicide bombings and other attacks that have taken place in Pakistan have been Afghani people. Back to the article. Damaged businesses and shops nearby, a newly formed militant group, Tehreek-e-Jihad Pakistan, believed to be an offshoot of the Pakistani Taliban, claimed responsibility for the attack. The military and local police said 6 other attackers were also involved in the assault at the police station, triggering an hours-long shootout before all 6 were killed. Some of the wounded officers were said to be in critical condition, and there were fears the death toll would rise. Muhammad Adnan, a senior police official, said the casualties were taken to a local hospital. Later, the army said in a statement that troops killed 27 insurgents in multiple operations in the same region Tuesday. So it was an organized attack. This was just the police station just got the brunt of it. Let me see here. I think I lost my place. The attack targeted Darban police station in the city of Dera Ismail Khan, according to local officer Kamal Khan. The city is located in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, which borders Afghanistan and which is a former stronghold of the Pakistani Taliban. Khan said a larger number of security forces from across Pakistan were recently deployed at the station for intelligence operations against militants in the area in coordination with the local police. And I apologize if I butchered anybody's names there. I'm not perfect. The militant offshoot said in its claim of responsibility that it targeted officers who were at the police station. Mirban Khan, who owns a hotel next to the police station, that's a terrible place for a hotel, Mirban, described the scene, saying he saw many army soldiers killed and wounded. Pakistani President Arif Alvi denounced the attack and expressed his condolences to the families of those killed, saying their sacrifices would not go to waste and that such attacks would not weaken the resolve of security forces. Pakistan's caretaker Interior Minister Sarfraz Bhutto also denounced the attack as an act of terrorism. Well, obviously, a terrorist group claimed responsibility for it. It must be an act of terrorism. So there you go. And Zain says Pakistan is an Islamic nation, so this is not a religious attack. Well, I mean, it could be. They may be as an Islamic nation, but many of those Islamic factions cannot and do not get along. And they will attack each other based off of religious principles as well as anything else. I believe this passage means this, and you believe that passage means that. Jihad, I will kill you. And that's all it takes, often enough. And it's stuff that people have been fighting about for centuries, and they still won't let it go. But if they even remember what they're fighting about. But this right here, well, for all of the hate that Pakistan is getting for their mass eviction process of where they're starting with primarily people from Afghanistan, illegals, by the way, not people who have legal citizenship, but illegal aliens, throwing them out of the country, and they're being condemned by the UN, and they're being condemned by the European Union, and being condemned by the United States. This is why they're doing it, because this happens all the time. But you don't see these reports. You don't see them, which is why I'm showing it. Because people need to see that. They need to know. Helter says they don't believe in the same version of Islam as the terrorists, which is common with most of the Islamic groups. Yeah, which is what I was saying, which is why you sometimes see terrorist groups fighting against each other. Yes, they do. That's a very common thing. And like I said, bombings, as the article pointed out, this is the worst bombing in the last few months. Not the worst bombing they've ever had, just the worst one in the last few months. And that is actually a lot. 23 troops and 32 wounded is a lot. Plus, I don't know if it's specified if those 32 wounded are part of the firefight or just from the explosion. It really doesn't specify. There could be additional people wounded or killed in the firefight with the other terrorists that they were getting into it with. But like I said, it doesn't specify, so I can only speculate on that. Urban says, it worries me when I witness local police very obviously protect Islamic hate groups. I wonder how gradually the Weimar era police were corrupted and turned, but do we really need to wonder? Well, it doesn't hurt to ponder, to think about it, to speculate. Always wonder about that kind of stuff. And while we're on the subject of terrorism and Gaza and Pakistan and Palestine, here's something from this article has been circulating on different news sites, and this one is from Katie Couric Media. Same article on a bunch of different sites. It doesn't matter which one I read. It says, what's motivating the swell of pro-Palestinian protests on college campuses? Well, I can answer that question very easily, but let's see what they have to say about it. There is a tension in the air on college campuses right now, and it's impossible to ignore. Since October 7th, when the brutal Israeli-Hamas war erupted, students have rallied at Ivy League institutions, community colleges, and big public universities in every corner of the U.S., often in support of the Palestinian people and a ceasefire. In many cases, they've engaged in emotional displays of commiseration for those in Gaza who've endured a barrage of Israeli aggression. But some of these demonstrations have turned ugly. Reports of violence, harassment, and anti-Semitism are on the rise, the Biden administration said earlier this week. You don't need the Biden administration to confirm that, because it's true, because they're a bunch of spoiled, rotten kids who are going to throw a tantrum if they don't get their way. So what's behind the impassioned stance on these outspoken students, and how are their opinions shaking up the political status quo? Let's take a dive into the discourse. And they give you their take on it. It says, it shouldn't come as a surprise that this generation of college students is highly engaged and more than willing to organize for a cause they believe in. They became politically conscious during the Parkland shooting protests and crowded the streets during the Black Lives Matter movement. But many view this wave of student activism as distinct, for its sheer ferocity and for how sharply it has divided progressives. Critics say the hardline stance taken by some protesters excuses gruesome acts by Hamas and shows a disturbing lack of sympathy towards the Israeli hostages and their Jewish peers. The commitment to this point of view has stunned even liberals who have historically embraced most social justice causes. No, not most, just select ones. The conversations happening on campuses right now around Israeli and Gaza don't really hold space for nuances, says Peter Hambly, a political journalist who hosts the popular Snapchat segment Good Luck America. For the most part, the discourse has eroded into a binary that he describes this way: Israel bad and Palestine good. And that's really the core of it. It's not because they're highly engaged and more than willing to organize for a cause they believe in. In the protests in the 60s and 70s of the Vietnam War, you saw students far more motivated and far more dedicated than you're seeing now. And their protests went nowhere either, by the way. But they were far more dedicated. They didn't even have social media. Okay. So that's not it. That's not it at all. I'll read a couple of comments and then I'll dig back into this. Sven says, I get tired when students start speaking. At this point, I'm shocked if they're saying anything smart. They didn't learn anything. Urban says, money drives, colleges follow the money. And we've talked about that. Because a lot of these colleges and universities have taken in billions of dollars from the Middle East, from many of these groups, from Iran, from Saudi Arabia, from the Jordan, and follow the money. And this is something that was being investigated under the Trump administration. And that investigation was kiboshed when Biden took office. And it's really not been looked into since. And Rodney says, these students are so divorced from reality, it's surreal. They wouldn't last 5 minutes in an Islamic nation. No, they would not. And Henry said, these people couldn't even find Israel or Gaza on a map. I'm sure they couldn't. What's really behind it is because there's a two-way concept of looking at these sort of things that has been expressed in colleges and universities, in public schools, in the media, not just the news media, but in the entertainment media as well, for the last nearly 20 years, for the last couple of decades, really. And that is that you're one of two things: a victim or a victimizer. You're either on the receiving end or you're given it. The other thing that they've taught them is that primarily Caucasian people are the victimizers. They've drilled this into people's heads. So if you're a victim, you can do no wrong. If you're a victimizer, you're evil and you can do no right. It's as simple as that. And if you're a victimizer, you're most likely going to be white. And in the United States, where we have a lot of European descendant Israeli people, Jewish people, if you will. A Jew is not an appropriate term, but they accept the term now. A Jew would refer specifically to somebody from the tribe of Judah, or Yehuda, actually, since there is no J in the Hebrew language. Jew is an anglicized terminology, but in their eyes, Jews are white people, so they're victimizers. And Zane says that it's Israel's fault. I don't necessarily believe that, but you can believe that if you want to. But these kids in these campuses don't know one thing or the other about Israel or Palestine. They don't know one thing or the other. They just assume. Plus, the colleges have led them in that direction because the colleges get a ton of money from the Middle East and have made great efforts to disguise that money, which, again, was being investigated under the Trump administration. And when Biden took office, he ended those investigations. At that time, more than $5 billion in donations had been uncovered coming from the Middle East to college campuses and universities across the U.S., and now it's as high as more than $8.5 billion. Helter says these kids are fighting for a cause without having any real substance and goal, a sustainable end goal. They're glomming onto a trend to give themselves fake purpose. the very embodiment of rebel without a cause. Yeah, we've talked about that before. Urban says in the years 2018 and 2019, among the biggest donors to Harvard were Bill Gates and the United Arab Emirates. And speaking of Harvard, I thought this was interesting. Now, this ties in a little bit to what we were talking about. Has to do with the president at Harvard, and this comes from the Western Journal. And that's a picture of her right there. It says, woke Harvard president built administration career on plagiarized PhD dissertation, according to reports. Dr. Claudine Gay, with the gigantic glasses there. A number of things happened when Hamas terrorists launched a barbaric invasion of southern Israel on October 7th that involved killing swaths of women and children in the process. First and foremost, there was the clear and devastating loss of innocent life. There were then the horrific images that began circulating shortly thereafter. The invasions also sparked a counteroffensive from Israel, starting a war that could be slowly inching to its bloody conclusion months after the fact. So what's the point of that as we get into it? I'd rather get more into the article about Dr. Gay here. It's all right. Here we go. Not only did the presidents of the universities of Pennsylvania, Harvard University, and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology each fail to really address the issue on their campuses, none of them could even properly denounce calls for Jewish genocide out of some misguided sense of free speech. That had put Penn State President Liz McGill, Harvard President Claudine Gay, and MIT President Sally Kornbluth understandably under a searching public microscope. It's interesting that they're all the presidents are females. For Gay, that microscope was peered through by conservative journalist Christopher Rufo, and it appeared the journalist found quite the skeleton in the closet. Now, what Rufo, without having to read all of the quotes, because there's a ton of quotes in here from her published papers, what he discovered was, and has exposed now, that for her PhD dissertation, in order to get her PhD to become a doctor in 1997, her papers were plagiarized. He was able to match her papers with papers that had been previously published by other individuals. Harvard, by the way, says that they're not going to pursue it, even though that is a violation of Harvard's standards. And according to their own bylaws, she should be discharged from her position, and she should also lose her doctorate because she didn't earn it under their laws and regulations. Zane says, I never said it was Israel's fault. I'm just saying both sides refused to come to a conclusion to the war peacefully. They won't. They won't come to a conclusion peacefully, Zane. I'm not trying to misinterpret you. That's just how it looked when I read it. Gary says the left hates religious people in general, but Christianity and Judaism most. Israeli and the Holy Land is thus viciously targeted. Political Islam and the left are strange bedfellows. They don't care about Islam either, but that's where a lot of their money has come from in the last decade. And so they don't want to interfere with those donations, because you think the United Arab Emirates or Iran or Jordan or anybody else is going to send any more money to Harvard if she says, hey, students, knock it off. I don't want to see any more of this on campus. So she's covering her butt. However, because she refused to speak on it, this journalist picked her life apart and found the discrepancy. But Harvard's willing to ignore it. They said that they're not going to take a look at the investigation. They don't want to know. See no evil, hear no evil. Dragon says this business of putting people into positions of power based on a diversity checklist instead of their actual accomplishments and abilities needs to end before it destroys us all. It may be too late. And Helter says the university board fell for the DEI nonsense like many other academic institutions and is only now realizing what it leads to when taken to a ridiculous extreme. And this is about as extreme as it's going to get. So the woman's a fraud. I mean, maybe she's good at whatever her studies were, but she plagiarized her papers, which could have gotten her expelled. She would not have earned her doctorate at the time. which means that she would not have gotten her job at Harvard. She certainly wouldn't be their president. And again, I think it's interesting that all three of those major institutions are female presidents now. Urban says, regarding Israel, I'd like to remind some folks in your other chat that everything was peaceful on October 6th. And Gary says, Harvard gets millions of dollars from foreign alumni. Yeah. They don't want to interfere with the money that's pouring in. That's what Dr. Claudine Gay is worried about. All those funds that they hide by not disclosing the source. And again, that's what Trump was investigating. People say follow the money. You can follow it all the way to the Middle East, and it's not coming from Israel. There might be some, but I do know that in recent weeks, I should say, there have been some big Israeli donors that were like, because you don't take a stance on it, I'm not making any more donations. I've seen that in the news in a few places. And Dirk von Franz is here. How are the kitties doing? They're doing okay. I got two sitting here right now. I've got two sitting in here right now, keeping me company. There's Uncle. And then in the corner, you can't see her. She's in front of the closet door. Granny Smith is sitting there. Hey, Uncle. Uncle. You going to turn around? No. He's looking at someone else in the hallway. I don't know who's in the hall, though, because I can't see him. But that's what he's looking at. And again, it's a shame. It's a shame that there is so much negative influence in the colleges that they care, obviously, more about the funding than they do about the education that these people are receiving. They don't care about the education at all. It's supposed to be an institute of higher learning, not an institute of strife and social programming. And I'm at the point now again where I just don't I don't see the point of going to college or a university when all they're going to do is try to complete the indoctrination process that was started in public school. You go through 15 years of bullshit from Head Start, which is state funded, from Head Start all the way to 12th grade. And then you go to college and they do the same damn thing. And you come out of there without having actually learned anything. And constantly being bombarded with socio-political bullshit. Without even a choice. Not a this or that. Do you believe this, yes or no? Believe this or you're going to be ostracized is the approach. And young people who want to go along to get along will suck it up. Gary says the very first question they should ask these college presidents is, do you understand what a yes or no question is? Well, that's a very gray area, Gary. That's a very gray area. That, by the way, Gary, is how you end up with people like the Supreme Court nominee saying that she can't answer the question as to what a female is because she's not a biologist. I don't know the difference between a male or female. I have children. I've birthed kids, but I don't know the difference between a man and a woman because I'm not a biologist. Do you know what a car is? You're not a mechanic. Do you know what a house is? You're not a carpenter. Do you know how the toilet works? You're not a plumber. I mean, how stupid are we? Derp says it's almost like these people take money full knowing the place they live is going to be destroyed, but hey, got money now. Insanely pathetic. It's sad is what it is. They're selling these kids out. Selling them out. Rodney says, my niece went to university here in New Zealand and has some odd socialist ideas because of it. Her friends, however, are all crazy commies. And Dragon says, if schools were serious about instilling real-world hard skills, young people would already be graduating at 13 and getting their CPAs at 16. They'd be making six figures and have a house. Yeah. And when I was, I've worked with private schools before too, and this is in Kansas, and there's a place called Care Parvel, and Care Parvel is a private school that is so far ahead of itself that by the time the kids are in the 10th grade, they've already tested completely out of anything that they would be required to do as far as public school is concerned, and they spend the last 2 years in college prep. So they really graduated when they're in 10th grade in that school. Very efficient school and very classical school. And they take language arts extremely seriously there, to the point where students are required to learn Latin so that they can understand the root of all the words that they're working with when breaking down sentence structure. So I'm like, yeah, I was impressed with Care Parvel. I think it's one of the better private schools I've ever seen. And no social stuff in the school, at least not when I was dealing with them, which was more than a decade ago at least. So, yeah. But back to Derp's point. Yeah, they are selling these people out, but it's not just these schools. It's not just these schools, because we're seeing our politicians doing it. We're seeing celebrities do it, selling you out for a few extra dollars. And that's the joke I throw out sometimes. It's like, do you really think Samuel L. Jackson has a Capital One card? Because he advertises for him. Be a hero. What's in your wallet? I bet you he don't have a Capital One card. And if he does, I bet he doesn't pay the rate that I would have to pay. You know what I mean? Just sell that bitch. They don't care. Gary says people who refuse to answer yes or no question asked by Congress should be held in contempt and jailed immediately. Well, you would be if you were in a regular court and they asked you a yes or no question. The judge got pissed off, but they take a walk on it. They skate by. Back to that point again. I'm thinking back to once upon a time on the old Johnny Carson show, back when late night TV was still good, and he was interviewing somebody who was in the Olympics. And I forget which Olympics it was. This would be way back in the late 80s, okay? I'm pretty sure it was late 80s. I used to watch the Carson show when I was a kid. So he's interviewing the guy, and the guy is in a McDonald's commercial because they were sponsoring the Olympics. And he was asking him, so do you get free meals at McDonald's since you're in the commercial? He was like, oh, I can't eat McDonald's. Hell, I don't even eat meat. He was like, but they require us to do the commercials for sponsorship. That tells you everything you need to know. At least he was honest about it. Didn't want to do it, had to, because the team is being sponsored. I don't even eat meat. I wouldn't eat McDonald's anyways. Derp says one thing that needs to change is the corporations being classes as a person or human. Yeah, free speech says that a corporation could be an individual, and donations to a political party or a political individual can be considered a form of free speech. So, yeah, give me all your money, free speech. I want the corporations to make me a donation. I'm the president of like some major corporation. Where's Elon Musk when you need him? Are you watching Elon? Drop $100,000 into the little donation button or whatever they call it, the tip button. I don't even know what it's called. And Off Grid is here. He says, yo ho, he's a pirate. Glad you could make it. Well, we're getting close to wrapping up. Anybody want to see Uncle again? I showed Uncle at the very beginning of this because he was sitting in here. But I know we're down to the last minute. Uncle, come here, buddy. Uncle, the 20-pound tuxedo cat. Come here. Oh, big boy. Here he is. Hi, buddy. Say hi to everybody. Are you paying attention, Uncle? Uncle looks like he's barely awake. Looks like he's off-grid prosperity says off-grid pirate. Yes. Yeah, and Raccoon says he's awesome. Yes, he is a big boy. And Urban says waiting for the launch of your cat camera channel. I'd probably get 1 million views. That would offend me, actually, because, you work really hard to reach out to people. Hi, buddy. To reach out to people and try to have a conversation and, get people thinking and just be honest and give an honest opinion. And YouTube beats the hell out of you for it. Show cats, they want to kiss your ass. Talk about gay stuff, they want to kiss your ass. And I've mentioned that before. Where I really started getting into trouble on Coffee Talk a couple of years ago. I think I did a video on it, and I think YouTube might have pulled that video down. I'm over my time, but that's okay. I'll keep talking for a second. They sent me an email, a YouTube official. They wanted to offer me $5,000 worth of studio equipment and a trip to a conference in California, a YouTube conference, if I would alter my format to talk about Black Lives Matter and pro drag queen stuff. And I told them no. And ever since then, I've been getting shit on. So here you go, Uncle. I know you want to get back down. But what we see, John says, I'm in the UK. I always feel for you, especially at this time of the year because of your video where you mentioned your mother at Christmas. Well, yeah, I've always had a shitty Christmas. And I don't expect much. And my wife is good to me. I have a good wife. And she does a little something for Christmas, but I've never been really in the Christmas spirit because I grew up without any of that kind of stuff. Anyways, again, this is Coffee Talk. We're at Coffee Talk Live on YouTube, as well as Prepper University on YouTube, and at Coffee Talk Chat on X, formerly known as Twitter, where I can, thanks to Elon, put memes up now that I can't put up on YouTube, as well as fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. So thank you, everybody who was able to join us here today. Hope you got something out of the conversation. I'll go ahead and wrap things up, and I will catch you tomorrow.